Hola, cage fighting connoisseurs. This is KidNativeBloodyElbow.com, joined once again by the one, the only Eugene S. Robinson, author of Fight, Everything You Ever Wanted to Know About Ass Kicking, but were afraid you get your ass kicked for asking. Published by HarperCollins, available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and fine booksellers everywhere. Is that professional or what, Eugene?
Man, that was great. For a second, I thought I was at the wrong show.
But you're doing everything you can, like with the camera movement thing, like
Well, I'm trying to get the light right, so
I
you
see.
can actually see me. All right.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
It's a little better. My light's all jacked up because of this McMansion they're building next door. I continue to be outraged. My beautiful bucolic neighborhood is being ruined by tasteless bourgeois swine. But what are you going to do?
Well, I am sad and disturbed that this is the second time that you've mentioned this, and the place has yet to catch fire.
I've already talked about it too much for anything to happen like
Which
that.
is precisely why it's the most perfect thing in the world to do. It's a Sharon Stone argument from Indecent, what the hell was that movie she was in? Basic Instinct.
Yes. Well, that's another dated classic mentioned by Eugene S. Robinson. And we are here to talk about UFC on Fox 12, Lawler versus Brown, with the infamous and patented. Now you jinxed me. I was all pro at the beginning, and now I'm back to my usual stumbling dumb status. Lawler versus Brown, the infamous and patented Care Don't Care preview. Eugene, give us a disclaimer.
Well, the disclaimer is for you crybaby fighters out there who then might want to turn around and post anonymously crap comments under our shows that this has nothing to do with you. It actually has more to do with the marketing might that the UFC puts behind you, so that you should relax, take it easy, and realize that you turn out a great fight, we'll pay attention. But heretofore, we don't know who the hell you are because nobody's helped us understand who you are. Don't take it personally. Like, adverb, adjective, personally like.
You're muttering about grammar now. I was going to promise on this show we were going to solve both the Malaysian plane mysteries and settle the peace accords in Israel and Gaza and Palestine, but it looks like we're just going to be talking about cage fighting again. So
No. I mean, there's actually so much news, man. I mean, this has been a pretty heavy, stunning week for those fans of MMA as well as the world. I mean, with the Diaz signing, the talk about the super heavyweights,
which I think was bullshit. Dana hasn't been on the Brandon Shaw podcast in ages.
Right, yeah, neither confirmed nor denied, and the whole of Vladimir. I don't know how they got that missile launcher. I was taking a nap. Mistakes were made. I wasn't there, and the next day 2 war jets get shot down the exact same way. Hey, it's coincidence. Why are you guys looking at us?
Yeah.
To what I think is a predictable and disappointing response in regards to Gaza and Israel. I mean, it's the kind of thing that made American Jews crazy, and it made the first thing come out of their mouths after 9/11. It was like, now you know what it feels like. Come on, Jack. You pour a few missiles into Detroit. Well, maybe not Detroit's a bad example.
Yeah, I don't think anybody would get too.
But they pour a few missiles into the U.S., we'd lose our minds. So relax.
Yeah. But then on the other hand, you got missiles going into UN shelters after they've been designated as UN shelters for the civilians in Gaza to go away. So ugly situation.
In the initial causal agent missiles went where exactly?
Which causal agent missiles? Are you saying the Hamas causal agent missiles?
Yeah, the Hamas missiles.
They went all over the place. They even managed to shut down the Tel Aviv airport with a near miss. But I mean, the casualty figures are egregiously one-sided there. I mean,
hey, just because I have a good defense doesn't mean I'm not going to try to punch you in the face.
Well, it's more like an impotent offense on the part of Hamas. But the West Bankers are throwing rocks and bottles now, so. Yeah. It's yet another children's crusade against Israel from all sides. But Hezbollah is not getting involved, so.
I know. I thought that was pretty interesting. It's like you guys don't.
Well, Hezbollah's pretty occupied with the Syrian civil war. They came in and pretty much saved Assad's bacon, but then ISIS, one of the rebel groups that have been funded and supported by our nominal allies in the region, until they become a genie that gets out of the bottle and takes over a quarter of Syria and a third of Iraq, and now they're suddenly Satan itself. But Hezbollah is pretty occupied with all that shit, so they're not interested in another recap of 2007 with Israel, and just an ugly, horrible situation. And I do have to point out on the Ukrainian thing, if you read the New York Times article closely, though, about the follow-up jets that were shot down, they contradict themselves without pointing it out. They mentioned that the jets were buzzing right over their heads, and then were insisting that the jets that were shot down were flying way outside the range of shoulder-mounted rockets, which contradicts themselves. So I don't trust anybody in the Ukrainian situation. I think they're all scumbags. A lot of your neo-Nazi buddies are over there on the supposedly the putatively good guy side in the Ukraine. And honestly, like if there was a coup in Mexico or another coup in Mexico, a coup we didn't back in Mexico, how about that? Right. If Russia backed a coup in Mexico and there was suddenly a civil war, I think we would be doing more than shooting down just one or two passenger airline planes. But
you're not an apologist for Vlad, is what you're saying.
I'm not an apologist for Vlad. I'm just saying I don't know why we want to be fucking around over in his sphere of influence. And I do want to remind everybody, when we shot down an Iranian passenger plane in 1988, no fucks were given. So
well, there was the whole Shah thing. And the embassy and
that was like 10 years earlier. There was like literally nothing going on in 88.
And we're still punishing Cuba. In actual fact, Haiti.
And we've been implicated in bombing a Cuban passenger plane too. There was the whole nasty story of one of these old Batista terrorist types that we allowed to bomb a jet airliner and then like sheltered him for the rest of his life. But anyway, that's neither here nor there.
That is neither here nor there. People and nations specifically have very long, angry memories about this kind of stuff. So
it's true, and any government would be, any citizen would be hung for the crimes of the cleanest government. So
correct.
I'm not trying to say there's a good guys and bad guys situation. It's all bad guys out there. It's bad guys all the way.
But you know whose ass is stinging a little bit here, and I'm not saying this to be flip, really, necessarily, but it's gotta really be enraging to be the Netherlands right now. I mean,
what, did they had so many passengers on the Malaysian plane that got shot down?
No, I'm talking more specifically about a fall from national grace. I mean, if you go back a couple of 100 years, man, Dutch ruled the,
It's been about 400 years, but yes, they were once a mighty power, the Dutch Republic.
Yeah. How's that feel? Like you used to be a UFC champ, and then
I think it's probably like quitting heroin and being clean. Like every once in a while you get a little itch, but then you're like, man, I'm not in line for that shit anymore.
No, I thought more about the Don Fry getting beaten up in a hotel lobby by a fan turned enemy. Don
was very, very intoxicated at that point. Eugene.
Well, I guess the Netherlands is not intoxicated, but it's got to probably feel just about the same,
I don't know. In my experience, the Dutch are relatively mellow about the whole thing.
I've been there.
My father-in-law's Dutch, and I visit there regularly.
Yeah. Well, I've trained with Germaine Randami, the Iron Lady. Nothing mellow about it.
Well, I didn't say they were mellow in general. I said they were mellow about giving up the world empire.
Right.
But,
anyway.
and their colonial record, not a pretty one. Ask any Indonesian. By the way, Act of Killing. Have you seen that documentary?
Where they take them and make them recreate their crimes.
They take a bunch of guys who participated in the genocide in 1965 and get them to reenact their killings.
I haven't seen it, but if you've seen it, you should. I'm going to ask you right now. This feels just like nth generation Oprah to me. With the expectation being that these guys are going to get out there and kind of have a come to Jesus moment, start crying, and crying into their sweaters and going, man, how could I?
There is some crying, but some of the guys are completely unrepentant. One of the guys does have a come to Jesus moment, but I found it incredibly powerful and a very refreshing new
Okay.
style of documentary. I highly recommend it.
It's on it's on Netflix.
Netflix, Amazon, the whole.
I skipped over it last night to watch El Mariachi,
The original or the remake?
the original.
The original. All right, that was. I gotta go with that one over the one with the Spanish guy. What's his name? Antonio Banderas.
Banderas.
Yes, yes. I mean,
Recently,
that was a fine movie, but the original was, I thought, much better.
recently divorced Antonio Banderas.
Recently divorced with Melanie Griffith, or did he married a
Yeah,
younger
no,
woman?
no, no, no. He's with Melanie Griffith, but then they had pictures of Melanie Griffith. It's like, oh man, I guess it's been a while. But
Yeah, she's had some surgeries that were ill-advised, I think,
yeah,
and hasn't aged well. But it is what it is. But before we turn to the fights, a little talk about the MMA news. You didn't mention Gustafsson having to drop out of the John Jones fight with the knee injury.
that as well. That I mean, that's yesterday. I interviewed Javier Mendez. So as luck would have it, I had a scheduled interview with him for a piece I'm writing for somebody else. Oh man!
You're free to plug your other publishers, Eugene. We're not anonymous here.
It's for Vice's Fightland. I didn't even think about a plug issue, but I just didn't want to jinx the piece before I'd written it.
I see. Fair enough.
We typically call it the pop-off mess-up man. Or you're one of those guys like, I'm gonna, dude. I'm gonna. And then...
That's my entire creative career,
yeah,
but go ahead.
That's a dramatic rendering of my life. I'm gonna. But I mean, the vibe there is pretty freaking electric. It's like, yeah, they said they were like, we kind of figured by the end of the year that we would start coming up with, the fight plan for, and he's like, so everything now is super fast. They've
got to like their chances. I've got to think Cormier has the best chance of anybody to dethrone John Jones.
Yep. Yeah, well, he was, as you might expect, pretty cloistered about exactly what the strategy was. But because we caught them at the moment of shock, I think he probably talked more freely than he would have at any other time. So I'm looking forward to I'm going to try to get the piece written this week, and I'll probably publish it on Monday.
Well, cool. We'll look forward to that. And then Nick Diaz, of course, signing a new 3-fight deal with the UFC. Very exciting. And there's talk about him fighting Anderson Silva on Super Bowl weekend. Now, that would be a heck of a fight.
Yeah.
Or at least a heck of a spectacle.
Well, hold on. Talking about the super heavyweights, spectacle is a 400-pound sumo wrestler getting his tooth kicked out by Gordon Gaudreau, right? That's spectacle.
Gerard Gordeau.
I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm not seeing, two supremely talented mixed martial artists. One who may or may not be contemplating, and I'm not buying this. No, Chris Weidman again. I think Silva was like divert. Don't want to think about it now. Don't want to answer any more questions about it now. Let's see how this works before I contemplate it. But if he has a great showing against Nick Diaz, I mean, I don't think Anderson Silva's sticking around just to prove he can get back on the horse and walk out on his own terms.
I don't know, man. I think he's here to make some cash money and have some fun. I mean, I think he really wants to fight Nick Diaz, Roy Jones, have some fun fights. Why dick around with these wrestlers that want to take you down and beat you, while your legs are up in the air? I don't know. I think Anderson Silva's proven everything he has to prove. Although, really, if you look back at his career, Dan Henderson's the only really great wrestler he beat in his prime. But you're always going to have questions about fighters. But let us get to the topic at hand.
Yes.
The Care or Don't Care preview of UFC Fox 12, Lawler versus Brown. Obviously, we care a great deal about the headliner, Lawler versus Brown. And you've got a new co-star. Introduce the kitty.
I can't. I got to tell you these cats around. This is the deaf one from the last show, and he you can't tell him to shut up because he can't hear you.
Oh, the deaf. I'm not a prejudiced person, but I've had some unpleasant encounters with deaf people. I used to live in an apartment complex right next door to the Austin, I can't remember what it's called, State School for the Hearing Impaired, and had some interesting interactions with my neighbors. They can be very loud sometimes and yet can't hear you when you tell them to shut the fuck up.
Yeah, right. You do a lot of pointing at your ears. It's like dealing with soundmen all the time. Yeah.
I think all sound men are deaf. Any licensed union member, of course, is
No, we had this great idea that we were going to start a magazine called American Sound Man, and it was going to show a guy sitting at a board going like this. What?
Huh?
I
What?
can't hear. Yeah, exactly. At one point, my drummer is sitting having a staring duel with the sound guy, and I'm like, "What are you doing?" He goes, "Just wait for it." And so it's like 30 seconds, 40 seconds, a minute and a half, and finally, my drummer breaks down and says, "You gonna mic these drums?" And the sound guy goes, "Oh man, I knew this was too easy." If I get just was sitting there waiting for the mics to magically, mic themselves,
I see. Well, I won't say anything about rock stars who have to get lackeys to do all their work for them instead of DIYing the mics themselves.
Yeah,
But
right. Yeah, there's no drummer who's micing his own drums, man. He's got
not well,
to
no.
set them up. He's got to tune them, you know. And
You know, Charlie Watts doesn't tune his drums, and he's one of the greatest of all time. Seriously.
We got to talk about that.
Yeah. But all right, let's get to the fights. We've got 4 fights on the preliminary UFC Fight Pass card. First up, the second.
Keep in mind, I might be incredibly biased because I got tickets.
You're going to this show.
Yeah, I'm going to the show, so
I
I can't beat a dummy with the tickets going. I don't care. What the fuck did I get these tickets? I could use that money right now.
I'm a little bit more informed too because I already emceed the Vivisection. So Zane Simon and Dallas Winston have schooled me a bit on these guys, so I'm a little bit more. I still think the undercard. Say it.
That guy.
There you go. One-man meme. It's almost catching on, Eugene. It's been repeated by 2 or 3 other people.
Yeah.
All right, so women's strawweight, second women's strawweight fight in UFC history: Juliana Lima versus Joanna Jorgic. Now you should know how to say this name with all your connections to Poland. Do you have any idea?
I have to see it written out, man. I'm not a
J-E-D with the E has some kind of tilde underneath it.
Forget it. Sure.
I got to spell that. Jedrzejczyk.
And you have failed your field sobriety test, sir.
Indeed, that is not the alphabet backwards. All right, care or don't care?
Well, of course, this is now very specifically to drive that one guy crazy who was offended and appalled that I reflexively enjoy women's MMA just because they're women. Even though
sexism, Eugene. You're holding the men's movement back.
That's what he was saying. I'm surprised Kid Nate didn't call you on this. And I'm like, how does it not make
sense? He knows I'm a strong brother for the men's rights movement.
How does it not make any sense to you that me, the father of 3 daughters, would like to see my daughter see somebody in the cage who's not wearing a bikini, regardless of their skill level, I mean, a 12-year-old is not processing, this girl is not as good as Uriah Faber, even if she doesn't look as good as he is, I mean, so, yeah, I care.
You care. And I care because this JJ chick, by all accounts, is an extremely dangerous fighter, a killer kickboxer with some decent wrestling, so very curious to see how she does. Might be something exciting. And after you...
And also it makes me think about JJ Fad.
And, always a agent to think about JJ Fad. That's been a long time.
Supersonic.
About that. All right. Now quit dating us. Everybody knows we're old already. All right. So welterweights, Andreas Stahl and Gilbert Burns.
I have to say I don't care.
Yeah, I don't care either, and I've even heard the preview. Featherweights, Steven Seiler and Noad Lahat. Somebody cares.
Yeah. Well, who was the second name?
Noad Lahat.
No, I don't.
He'll be rushing back to Israel to protect his homeland after the fight. Is that...
Well, you know what was funny about that is that on Knuckle Up I was talking about aggrieved nations and their ability to turn out. This is in relationship to Conor McGregor and their ability to turn out good fighters. And I was like, yeah, you might respond. I was anticipating a counter that would be like, well, how come Israel doesn't have? Well, Israel, I said Modi Horenstein. If you to go way back in the UFC,
he hardly made any waves in the MMA world. I mean, Reza Aslan made more waves. Oh wait, Reza Aslan's the famous theological scholar. I'm thinking of the guy Brian Johnson, hip toss, not like author of Zullet.
There's also Haim. This guy's count himself as a friend of mine, Haim Ghazoli, who's who runs Tel Aviv's EDCC, which you do have in Tel Aviv on occasion. So, who's a great grappler. I don't know so much about his stand-up skills. So, but I don't think I completed the argument. But anyway, yeah, I forgot about Lahat being.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Do you really think Israel's an aggrieved nation? I know that
No, I don't actually.
I mean, I think that they're more like the British in the Northern Ireland situation.
Nah, well, and also since
Ireland.
1947, I mean, you're talking, when you talk about Ireland, you're talking about a nation that's had a long, long history of being aggrieved. I mean, you can't be
A long,
aggrieved.
horrible history. I mean, the Irish, you couldn't be geographically placed worse than the Irish unless you're one of the Native American tribes that was wiped out by smallpox and then colonialism, or any of the many races you never heard of that were wiped out by the Han Chinese and the other continent-wide genocide you never hear about. But the Irish, man, having the English, and I'm, largely English myself, having the English for neighbors is about as bad as you can do in the draw. I mean, even the Scots, who are just horrible, and I'm mostly Scottish, horrible, fearsome people, have not fared well with the English, although they were never conquered by the English. That's the big difference. Any Scotsman will tell you. Did you get the whole thing where they were calling Conor McGregor a proud Irish warrior tradition? I'm like, what war have the Irish ever won? Like, they didn't even win any gang wars against Al Capone. Come on. I mean,
right. Well, that's that's you might dodge Shalala's story, but my favorite Boston Irish mafia story was the guys going to rob a bank, and on the way to rob a bank, stopping to mug a guy for his wallet. Hey, we're gonna rob this bank, man. We're gonna get 10 grand. Hey, stop that guy.
That's like H.H. Holmes, the devil in the White City, getting busted over like he shoplifted $5 or something, I think. Into the
Winona Ryder-esque. This is about understanding the shoplifting thing.
Yes. That's why John Belushi in his famous op-ed on Saturday Night Live about the Irish called it, "It's not bad luck, it's dumb luck." Well, anyway, you see my Scottish tribalism is coming to the fore. I have great sympathy for my Jewish and Arab friends when they lose their shit over this Gaza thing. Because if this was about Belfast, I wouldn't be all that rational about it, and I have no real reason. I'm not like invested.
But hold on. Look, I think we could all. I don't care what side of the fence you're on this thing. If you remove Israel from the equation, if Israel ceases existing, right, which is kind of what Hamas is pushing for, the Middle East is still fucked up.
The Middle East is endlessly fucked up. I mean, Syria has way more casualties this week than Gaza does, and nobody's talking about that.
Exactly.
I saw a good essay about that the Arabs they're used to Arabs killing each other. They're not so much concerned about but when it's Jews over there, it's different. And I think it is a little different for Americans because we're basically funding Israel, and Israel's our client state. My concerns with the situation are mostly like strategic, long-term, what's in Israel's best interest. And I don't know that invading Gaza was in anybody's best interest. Like, you don't back your enemy into a corner and give him no way out in the first place. And then if you do that, then you don't go into the corner and fight with him. Like, there's no end game. Like,
it's an interesting conundrum, and we've talked about it in various forms before. And I remember at one point or another that Klaus Fluoride, when he was producing the Whipping Boy stuff, he was talking about...
That's the dead Kennedy's Klaus Fluoride.
And he was talking about his lifelong stratagem as a guy who hangs out in bars, but is also a small guy. And he said he would...
He's relatively tall. He's just scrawny.
Klaus Fluoride?
I thought he was tall. It's East Bay Ray that's tall, isn't it?
Yes,
Klaus
Ray is tall.
A little guy.
Klaus is
Well, Jello didn't have a very good strategy for hanging out in bars.
No, he was hanging out at Gilman. That was not a bar. Had he been in a bar, he might have been all right.
I see. All right, good correction.
But he would say he would typically, if he would flip shit, he didn't give a fuck. If the biggest guy in the bar didn't care, and when it got chippy, he would step off his stool and go, "What are you gonna do? Hit me? What's it gonna prove?" He's like 5'3", and so the guy would go. And then I've been thinking about it since he told me this, like in 1988, and I was like, do I have an obligation to not beat a smaller man just because he's a smaller man, no matter what he does? And then I beat up that guy from Texas, that guy from that band Amplified Heat in Washington, D.C., and, all of his fans on their website and so on were like, Eugene, he's this MMA guy, and he picked on this little guy. It's like, hey, man, the little guy attacked me. Why do I
think when you're attacked, you have a right to defend yourself. But I've played the "What are you going to do?" hit me card on big guys many a time.
What happened?
It's worked pretty well. I've taken some ass beatings, but there was one guy, a good friend of mine, that I utterly destroyed in front of our whole gang, like completely destroyed him. Even though he pummeled me, I psychologically scarred him for life with, because no matter what he did, he couldn't stop me from shit talking him, and everybody was like, dude, you're not making any friends here beating up this little Nate. So it was
just stop.
It can work every once in a while. Have you seen the MC5 documentary True Testimonial?
No, this I've not seen.
Wayne Kramer fucking sued them for pocket change because he wanted a producer credit and prevented the movie from coming out 10 years ago. So another brilliant career move from the great Wayne Kramer. And I mean the great Wayne Kramer, but I also think he's a stupid asshole. But great documentary. And they talk about how the bonding experience of Fred Sonic Smith and Rob Tyner was getting in a fist fight in an icy parking lot. And Sonic got Tyner down and was, proceeding to beat him. And Tyner was like, "Is that all you got? Is that all you got?" Like, and Sonic, it just blew Sonic's mind that, like, whoa, you mean I can beat a guy up and still not win? And so that was epic. And yet, at the end, when Tyner ultimately quits the band because they had all turned into junkies and completely, ne'er-do-well idiots, and Tyner said he'd had enough, Sonic went over to his house and started another fist fight that didn't solve anything. So.
Yeah, that's what, I had some guy call me all outraged. He found some text on his girlfriend's phone, and he was like, oh, freaking outraged.
From Eugene?
Yes, from
Oh. Thought you'd put this behind you, Eugene.
Hey, man, again, I didn't, out of the blue, start texting his girlfriend, but I wasn't going to put her on Front Street. She started texting me.
I see.
And so he's like, I'm going to kick your... And I said, hey, let me tell you, here's my address. If you think that punching me in the face a bunch of times is going to improve the quality of your relationship, well, I, for one, am willing to let you try. He goes, oh, no, I know you're a fighter guy. I'll get somebody to do it. I said, no. I'm not talking about fighting you. I'm talking about resisting. I'll sit on my hands. You just punch away until your relationship gets better.
Well, what if you found it like totally satisfying to punch you in the face, Eugene?
It still wouldn't make his relationship better.
It's true, but your face would get all busted up. I mean. Yeah,
well, I stopped him before he got to that. It was a great moment where I said, hey, man, listen, I thought you guys were swingers. He's like, swingers? I was like, and you don't see me getting upset at, like, if you were to try to fuck my old lady, right? And the guy was like, wow, wait a minute. You could see him trying to do the math. Wait a minute, this could work out for me here. But then he suspected that there was trickery afoot. Yeah,
It often is.
Then he went back to threatening to punch me in the face to improve his relationship. It doesn't work.
I don't know. I don't know a great deal about wife swapping, but from what I've heard and read, I don't think there's ever been an even wife swap in history. I think somebody always feels like they got the short.
Somebody gets the short straw.
Hey, I'm sitting right here, okay?
Yeah. I don't be that kind of straw, Jack, but whatever.
The Iranian fighter I was mentioning was Reza Nasri from UFC 11. He got smocked by Brian Johnson. But anyway, let's move on. We're on the second fight of the card. Actually, third fight. So we've got 3 no cares going, or 2 cares. Wait, excuse me, 1 care for both of us and 2 no cares. Lightweights Akbar Areola and Thiago dos Santos rounding out the Fight Pass portion of the card.
I don't care.
Don't care. I don't care either. Although Akbar Areola is a Mexican fighter that they're trying to push, but they're throwing him in the deep end here. And that brings us to the 4 fights that are on the preliminary card on Fox, not FS1, but Fox.
I'm so glad I don't have to think about all this crap. I just got to show up at 1:30. That's
right. Show up and but see, even if this is like the easiest card to watch ever, Eugene, you just turn on Fox. Like,
I don't have
you don't even
TV.
need cable. You don't have TV. You just find a friend who's got cable. Anyway,
I have no.
featherweights. Friends, yes, that's right. Because then you'd be texting their girlfriend later. Michael De La Torre
Yeah.
versus Brian Ortega, featherweights.
So say it again. I was too busy exulting at the prospect of calling somebody's girlfriend.
Michael De La Torre and Brian Ortega.
I don't care.
Yeah, I don't care either. All right, welterweights: Hernani Perpetuo versus Tim Means.
Okay, now we're getting into some care territory.
And what's driving the care train?
Well, we spent at least 5 minutes on a previous Care Don't Care praising Perpetual for having a great last name. So,
That was Thiago Perpetua, though. So this is the transitive property of Perpetuo's last name. So every fighter named Perpetuo.
Yeah, I think so, man. I think.
All right, fair enough. I can respect that.
No, actually,
That's what you wanna call it?
I'm shocked that there are two Perpetuals, and I'm going to have to say that I don't care.
Brutal and harsh. I think this is one of those Brazilian nicknames that becomes somebody's fighting name, which I hate when the UFC does that, but I understand why they do it. Anyway, light heavyweights I don't care either. Light heavyweights Kyle Kingsbury and Patrick Cummins, the Starbucks barista turned Daniel Cormier challenger. And what's driving that? Is it Cummins, the rags to riches story, or Kingsbury's?
I was just staring at Kingsbury's picture at AKA. And Kingsbury is what kind of analogy can I use? He's like, he's just a fighter that I've never really seen win, but he keeps getting fights, and I don't see that he's got much cachet. And I'm glad I'm saying this before I went down to AKA and are not scheduled to go to AKA afterward. But it's kind of true. I mean, again, it's not a reflection on. I'm sure Kyle Kingsbury is a great guy.
He had a four-fight win streak at one point in his UFC run. Of course, one of those was a decision over Fabio Maldonado. I disagreed with, but
I remember that as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've seen him. I mean, part of the problem when you're local is that you hear things.
Ears to the ground and whatnot.
I hear some things. And I don't know whether these things are true or not. Who could tell? But I care about Kyle Kingsbury because I want him to break out of what I think is an externally imposed jail of failure. Because people, every time I bring his name up locally, people are like, that guy. So
it's got to be better than what you hear about our man Mike Kyle.
Oh boy, yeah, I can't. The Mike Kyle stories have gotten better. I mean, Mike Kyle in total has gotten better. I thought
he's returning his roommate's Blockbuster videos now that Blockbuster's not in business anymore.
Yeah, he probably has. He probably stopped threatening him about buying a refrigerator, and now I think his turn to religion was probably a genuine one. I mean, his big problem was that he refused to do any ground stuff. And I mean, this is one of the things that Javier said in the interview yesterday. Super talented guy, but just refused to embrace the game fully. And he said that since subsequently changed. But there's these. I was asking him about how he motivates his fighters, and you just can't motivate. You can't motivate. I mean, the guy comes in motivated, or he leaves. I mean, you can't.
Some coaches would beg to differ. The great Jimmy Johnson of the Dallas Cowboys with his Machiavelli mind games and his puppet string pulling and everything. Like he kept everybody embroiled and motivated and outraged and won Super Bowls, Eugene. Super Bowls.
Yeah, how many? How many did he win?
He won 2, and then Barry Switzer won one that was essentially given to him by Johnson. So, it wasn't sustainable. The Jimmy Johnson approach isn't necessarily sustainable, but that kind of unrepentant assholism does have short-term go power. All right, lightweight.
Is he dead?
Jimmy Johnson? No. Where does that come from? What? I don't believe he's not dead.
You just have to ask that periodically to subtly indicate
that you don't care.
Yeah.
We were arguing on Facebook about Hank Williams III and Phil Anselmo, and I liked your it's Phil Hank Williams III isn't dead to my knowledge, but
Yeah, right. That's where that guy was saying, "Oh, it was you? It was you?
Yes.
Who was that poster who was going crazy about Phil Anselmo?
I just
how
don't like
horrible
Phil
he was."
Anselmo.
Yeah.
I can't forget Phil Anselmo. Plus, they ripped off Helmet completely. Pantera, I think, did more than Helmet did, but I was in an argument with Luke Thomas, and he didn't believe me.
No,
He
you're
rejected
wrong.
out of hand that Pantera was influenced by Helmet, and I'm like,
I'm rejecting it out of hand.
Are you kidding me? Helmet totally invented that style of rock. Totally.
They did not, man.
Yes,
they
they
were
did.
They were super controlled. You know, it was super math rocky, and the vocals couldn't be more. The vocals were definitely more touch and go, sort of. You know,
the vocals. I'm not talking about the vocals. I'm talking about the instrumental side of the band. That's what Pantera was.
Nah, that start stop thing. I'm just, man. I've never heard anybody make that case. I'd have to think about it, and I'd have to A/B this stuff. I'm just not hearing that at all on the face.
And listen to Pantera, because they go from glam rockers to suddenly they were the only metal band of their era to survive, the grunge music change. And they, besides Alice in Chains and those assholes that jumped on the grunge bandwagon, they were the only band to stay metal and evolve. And I argue they did it by adopting some influences from Helmet, which is totally great. I love Dimebag
Darrell. Yeah, except the Page Hamilton thing. I've listened to some of his records since then, and I just can't.
Well, I'm not saying he was a great talent, and I think Helmet failed to develop. I think their first couple records are pretty good.
Meantime, that's it.
Strap It On's better before that.
Yeah, you're right. That's right. I forgot about that. That's right.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. And so they were doing that.
So two records, man.
Two records is that's more than a lot of people have done, Eugene. I mean, how many records do the 13th Floor Elevators do? You don't have to.
How many records did Oxbow do?
Oxbow did a lot of great records, but I mean, that doesn't. What do you want? What do you want? A metal?
Page Hamilton is in L.A. Got a nice, big, expensive studio. Wakes up around noon. Wanders in.
How do you even know this?
Come on, I used to be the editor-in-chief of EQ magazine, man. I interviewed that guy a bunch of times,
You know that he's maintained this lifestyle?
Yes. Except, which makes me wonder, what the hell the other guys in Helmet are thinking. Hey, wait a minute. How come he's...
There were other guys in Helmet?
Yeah. Not now. Not now. Now it's Page Hamilton. Back then, it's some guys who were sitting around the house wondering, man, I got to pay this light bill. I wonder how Page is doing.
He's not paying your light bill, friend.
Yeah, he's not paying your light bill.
All right, but let's get to the good part of the card.
All right.
Lightweights, George Masvidal and Darren's Detroit superstar Cruikshank.
Yep, okay.
Oh, yeah. You got a pick in this one?
Yeah, Masvidal.
Yeah, I got to pick Masvidal, too. I think he's stylish. This is sometimes he fights down to the level of his opposition, though, and that kind of worries me. But stylistically, he should be able to get inside on Cruikshank, get past those kicks, and just beat the bejesus out of him. And that's too bad, because I love Cruikshank. But I love Masvidal, too, and I think he's got a title run in him, maybe. Yep. Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. I think he does, and I think he knows he does, which is helpful.
If he gets his shit together and fights up to his best. But let's get to the main card. Lightweights, Josh Thompson and Bobby Green. Bobby's got some sob stories. I don't know if you read, there was a big feature on him, an MMA junkie. He's apparently fleeing from a hit. His brother was killed by some gangsters, and he's sleeping in different locations every night, trying to avoid the same gangbangers that whacked his brother. So
Where? I didn't see this. Where did they whack his brother?
I believe in Detroit. I don't know where he's from. They killed him in some ghetto. I mean, they're black people, Eugene, and things happen.
What is one neighborhood? The
Inland Empire. Come on, Inland Empire.
Okay, all right.
That's a terrible place, isn't it?
You know what? You got to leave your neighborhood, man. There's so many guys who got killed because they couldn't go to 10 blocks outside of the neighborhood. Leave the neighborhood. Nobody's going to come find you in Long Beach or, I don't know, L.A. neighborhoods. But,
Glendale?
Yeah. Glendora. Go to Glendora.
Glendora? Is that a place? I thought that was a song by Lou Reed.
No. Glendora's a real place.
Glendora's a place, huh?
Yeah.
I thought it was a song about a mannequin that Lou Reed wrote. But anyway, all right. So Bobby Green's fighting a lot of obstacles. He's also fighting Josh Thompson. Your pal, friend of Knuckle Up, Josh Thompson, political simpatico.
Oh man. Oh man. Yeah. You know what? You know one thing. How do I end up talking worse shit about guys who I consider friends and then there's people I think are enemies? I always like to bring it up as often as possible how they were positioning Josh when he first started to get some sort of notoriety as a Stanford wrestler, and then it was worked out with the Stanford wrestling team, and then it was he's a wrestler.
Well, wrestling credentials are often inflated.
Yeah, well, and I asked him in the middle, I go, man, in interviewing him, I go, this is probably the first time in MMA history that two Stanford grads have, one who's a fighter, one who's a journalist fighter, have interviewed, have been in an interview together, and he got kind of quiet.
He attended for a few weeks, according to Wikipedia. So.
How can you attend for a few weeks? How does that work?
I attended a semester or two for a few weeks. I mean, it's pretty easy.
Where?
At University of Texas at Austin. I went back and finished, but...
right now, you could stand up from your headset and walk over there and say, I went to the University of Texas, and you would be factually accurate.
It's true. I've been there many times and graduated from there. That's the difference between me.
Oh, that's a different story. I've been to Harvard.
Yes, but it says he attended for a few weeks, and I'm telling you, I've had a semester where I attended for a few weeks.
Lie.
Well, you think he's lying about attending for a few weeks?
Yes, I was gonna start asking him where he lived. It's like, what dorm did you? And then I could just feel that wasn't the right way to go with that.
I see.
You could write any. I know a guy who created a Wikipedia entry.
Yeah, Josh Thompson could probably improve his college transcript by punching you in the face several times. He strikes me as the kind of guy who would feel a whole lot better about his college experience if he got to slap you in the mouth.
I challenged him. I periodically would do that. And when I interviewed him on Knuckle Up, and this is before things between us, before Facebook, and I realized that he was a political, troglodyte. And I said, hey, man, I'm going to come down there. I'm going to put some knots on your head. He was like, come on. I was like, all right, that's cool, because I was, I like to fight the pros. But then post things going to hell with our political sympathies being so different, I didn't repeat this. I didn't repeat my desire. Because at that point, guys really get hurt if they have real emotional animus.
I see. I mean, you're that upset over his opposition to gay marriage. I mean, I know it's ridiculous, but like.
Oh man, but I've been on as a Facebook friend of his. I've been reading his stuff for months and months, just biting my lip, man. It's just so retrograde and not.
But a lot of that shit's just being spewed from Fox News, and then people get it and then repeat it. Like I don't, I've lost some. I mean, I wouldn't say I've lost, but I've got like my mom's twin brother has gone completely around the bend, and I don't blame him for being a dupe of a massive media propaganda scheme. I don't know. But if you're not friends with the guy, fuck it,
I wasn't super good friends with him before anyway, so I would never make that claim.
So do you have a pick against Josh Thompson and Bobby Green?
Yeah, I'm going to have to go with Thompson.
Yeah.
Which galls me, but if he physically got sick when they chose Gil for the Ultimate Fighter TV show, setting him up with this is a guy who's still in it, still thinks he's in it. Has not forgotten at all what it was like to be in it, and what fuels a lot of that the Psycho monograph of Fox folks is his spite, and not even in the sense of guys turn your back on me, I'll show you, and so
yep.
I think. Of course,
he sometimes comes in hurt.
He sometimes comes in hurt because those guys, AKA, train like freaking monsters. And he is not, I was, again, Ant Dog, one of the fighters there, used to be a Kung Lee fighter, is now an AKA fighter. I saw him get caught on the electric chair yesterday. And I'm sure he's really happy that I'm repeating that.
Famous Eddie Bravo move.
Eddie Bravo, and he tried to resist, and the guy
Mm.
And I was like actually interested to see whether the guy, whether the guy would say, I got you, you can resist because that's what you got to do. And this guy was like, no, he's like, I'm cranking on this until you tap, and that's all there is to it. And yeah.
Oh, that's good. Better part of valor. All right, featherweights: Clay Guida and Dennis Bermudez.
Yeah, of course.
Yes, of course. Do you think Guida's got a shot here?
I'm a Guida nut jumper from way back, and so I'm going to say yeah.
I mean,
I think, I don't think he's stupid enough to not know that if he stuck his finger in the air, the wind is blowing against Guida.
Yeah. He's got to feel his hair blowing back. I mean,
got to feel it a little bit. And
yeah.
I'm thinking he's smart enough to be able to respond to it. So I'm gonna, yeah.
I'd probably root for Guida, but I'm picking Bermudez here. I think it's Guida's day might have passed. And speaking of days might have passed, Anthony Rumble Johnson against Antonio Rogerio Nogueira. Like, is this an old lion being fed to a young lion or what?
Yeah. Did you see what The Rock just said about Anthony? I actually almost spit out what I was drinking.
The Rock, the famous wrestler. What did The Rock say?
Dwayne Johnson said that 2015 was going to be the year of Anthony Rumble Johnson. He was going to start name checking him as his cousin, and that he thinks that the biggest risk, the biggest threat to John Jones is Anthony Rumble Johnson.
I after that last fight where Johnson, who did he destroy last time? Phil Davis. After he destroyed Phil Davis, I really feel like he's a real live threat. But I feel like there's a lot of live threats to John Jones. I think John Jones has got that UFC GSP disease where the UFC champions get smaller and weaker and more cautious and conservative the longer they have the belt. It's like the ring or something. It drains them of their life forces. And Johnson just looked ferocious demolishing Phil Davis and skilled.
Yeah, but I'd say that in my mind that I've not seen Phil Davis as being. I was always a big Phil Davis supporter, but it was always amazing to me that he was getting as far as he was getting with what I felt was a limited skill set.
Well, yeah. I mean, I feel like he's disappointed a little bit. His development has been maybe stunted. Maybe his wrestling style wasn't perfect for MMA. Like, not every collegiate wrestler has a great wrestling style for MMA, but nonetheless, I expected him to be able to do a little bit more against Anthony Johnson. I mean, Johnson's a guy who's been put on his back by lesser guys in the past, and I think he's much improved. And Rogerio is slow, and he's 38, and he's been hurt more often than he's been healthy. How many fights has he pulled out of? I mean, it's just.
I know.
I was calling him the jankiest.
We care about it, but I don't think either one of us are picking that.
No. I mean, Rogerio, I was really excited for his UFC run, mostly because I wanted to see a rematch of his great fight against Shogun that they had in Pride back in 2004, 2006, whatever it was. And I'm still pissed that they didn't manage to book that. But Rogerio, when he came in and he destroyed Luis Kane, I was like, holy shit, maybe he's got one last run in him. But then he had he squeaked by Jason Brills in what I thought was a great fight and deserved the win. A lot of people didn't. But then, multiple losses. Phil Davis barely beat Rashad Evans in what I thought was just like two zombies, shades of themselves, ghosting around the cage. And so I'm not at all. He did demolish Tito Ortiz, but again, talking about shades of themselves. I just I don't know. I has a sad about this fight, but I'm all about young lions eating old lions. That's what lions do. It's hard to get that sad about lions,
Well, actually, lions don't do that, but okay.
Hey, I read an article about a lion in
Are they cannibals?
Kruger Park, a lion serial killer. There was a young male lion who was killing all the females he mated with, and they were.
How does that make any sense?
It's how do serial killers make any sense?
Oh, right.
Psychology, like it was a bad lion. How about that? A bad lion.
I could have made genetic strategy wise. Yes,
not a payoff, but not every strategy is going to succeed long term genetically.
Yeah, right,
there's plenty of aberrant mutations that don't work out long term that Short term, it's great. I
Yeah.
mean, if that's what he's into. But
Somebody asked me the other day if I knew what John Wayne Gacy's last meal was. I thought that was a fairly random question.
do you know?
I know now it was like some, typical kind of strip mall breakfast place food, not waffles, but I think like fried chicken. But the
Huh.
big thing is lots and lots of strawberries.
Lots and lots of strawberries. John Wayne Gacy, what a loathsome individual. You know, he was basically running the death house he was in, supposedly. He'd bribed all the guards so effectively, and that he was paying, even after he died, he endowed, he's a wealthy guy, and he made money in prison, like selling his art and all this shit.
Yeah, I know some of the guys who helped him sell it. So.
Yeah, scumbags. And he was paying private investigators to harass the families of his victims from beyond the grave. Like,
I know this.
this is a vile scumbag. I'm generally opposed to the death penalty, but somebody like Gacy or Ted Bundy that's actually a menace, even from death row, I'm glad they got snuffed. Anyway,
Was Bundy a menace from death row?
are you fucking kidding me? He escaped from prison and killed like 4 more people. This is a guy who.
I remember the escape, but once he was on death row, was he?
Well, once he was on death row, he was the mayor of death row. I've read accounts of guys who were on Florida death row with Bundy, and when you checked into the facility, you thought you were all through getting checked in, and then you'd get to death row, and then they'd let you know, no, you need to really get checked in. Bring your file and come see Dr. Ted. And Ted had a big cell in the corner, and you'd have to bring your file in, and he'd lovingly peruse all the crime scene photos and everything, and go over your case with you, and then let you know how things ran on Ted Bundy's death row. I mean, it was, he was smarter than everybody else. He was freakishly strong, extremely, extremely dangerous guy.
However, I've heard the exact opposite story as well about Ted Bundy that involved him being on the business end of a prison rape.
It's quite I mean, everybody's somebody's fool, as they say. So,
I guess between the shot calling and the 8-0 rape, somewhere lays the truth. And
quite possibly.
How true that is for most of us. between our shot calling and 8-0 rape, I'm the king of this castle, and in an hour I will not be.
Exactly.
Over my desk. Oh, I'm sorry, boss.
Well, even Al Capone had a bad run in Alcatraz. Like his first day in Alcatraz, supposedly he went to the line of the barbershop and waddled up to the front of the line, and some Texan grabbed a straight razor and was like, "What do you think you're doing?" And Al Capone goes, "Don't you know who I am?" And the guy goes, "I'm fixing to know who you was. Now get back to the line."
Yeah, and then again, I remember hearing about Gotti in prison and how he had the hookup, So, but I don't think it was the hookup in prison is different. I don't think the hookup was because because they were afraid of Gotti. I think the hookup in prison was
he had cash money.
This guy can help me on the outside. I'm getting out before he will. He's hooked up.
Yeah.
So I think that's what it was about. So.
To he that hath will be given.
Yeah.
And given. Anyway, on to the fights.
But also that my understanding is that's typical that they have somebody. If you remember in the fight book, the guy says there's in every jail prison you go to, there's a secretary, somebody who comes in and asks to see your case file, which you have your box you take from prison to prison that you have with you, and they got to know what you've done, and they're not going to rely on you saying it. And the only person who will resist is a cop, a dirty cop who got busted, or child molesters. Everybody else is like, sure, it's right there. Take a look at it,
Yep. And that's why prisons have scholars who keep things like stacks of True Detective magazines so they can keep up with the creepiest pedo bears and such like. So if somebody suspicious moves to Leavenworth, they know they can research and find out who they were. Anyway, Robbie Lawler versus Matt Brown. Epic care.
Yeah,
who are you picking here?
I got to go with friend of Knuckle Up. It might be inadvisable, but I'm going to go with friend of Knuckle Up, Robbie Lawler, man.
Why do you think that's inadvisable? I mean, he's a heavy favorite.
Is he a heavy favorite? Good. I'm on the right side. Am I on the right side of prehistory, finally?
Just because somebody's a heavy favorite doesn't mean they're going to win, Eugene.
And also, as I figured out, my picks with the top of the card have been terrible. I do really well on the undercard, and somehow there's some bad juju enters my head, and but I don't think the fact that he's a friend of Knuckle Up he's a tough guy. multi-skilled, not old enough to be past it, and Matt Brown is plenty tough when he's not, opening his mouth about stuff he shouldn't. And
it's true.
and the guy's a PR walking PR disaster.
Oh man, he did it again this week. It's
Yeah, yeah. Hey, he did it again this week, and I suspect he's sitting around going, "What? What?"
Hey, you had to be corrected over that very same term. Remember?
Oh yeah, I did, but I was talking about myself.
Well, it's true, but still, it's just the goal line keeps moving on what terms are acceptable in polite discourse and what are not.
I did an interview with this woman who's a female.
As you yourself said, you no longer use the term cocksucker or motherfucker as a term of derision, so...
Yeah, well, I try.
Yeah, me too. Those are pretty good ones, man. Even though cocksucking, what's not to like? But, I still get mad and
Well, there's not a single person on this show right now who hasn't had sex with somebody's mother.
It's true. Elvis wouldn't do it. He never touched Priscilla again after she dropped Lisa Marie. Isn't that fucked up, man? The king lived a sad and miserable life. He was so, his relationship with his mother was so weird that I guess the only thing between him and his mom was this thing about mothers, so he took that taboo everywhere else he went.
Yeah, you got, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm gonna interview this guy who, I'm not gonna even talk about it, but he had a really interesting relationship with his mother, and he said, "You should write about me." And I said, "Man, you know how often I hear about that?" He goes, "Well, let me tell you." And I'm like, "Okay, you're right." This is probably one of the weirdest things that I've heard. It involved the matricide. So
matricide, whoa, that's a heavy sin there.
Yeah. Well, the second question I said was, did she deserve it? And he was like, yeah, let me tell you. And that's when it got really disturbing.
Huh. Yeah, my mom was in child abuse. I mean, she was a social worker, protecting children, and we had a couple in our town of moms who are horrifically sadistic and abusive, and that she thought as a rule 70-80% of her abusers were males, but that some of the most vicious and horrible ones were females. Anyway, but Lawler and Brown, I don't know. On the show yesterday, I was saying Brown didn't have any shot, or the day before yesterday. There's nowhere.
He really wants it. I think he really feels like he's the man of the moment.
That's true.
It's his time and all.
So does Lawler. Lawler's got a title shot. Both of these guys. This is for a title shot, and Lawler's already been in there with Johnny Hendricks and thinks he can beat him.
Yep.
And and Lawler's got to know he's the more skilled fighter and probably the stronger and faster fighter than Matt Brown. And I think Matt Brown has a better clinch game, but I don't know that it behooves him to be in the clinch with Lawler, because Lawler, I think, is a strength advantage, but you won't know until they tie up.
Yeah.
But
I love watching Lawler fight no matter what, man. I actually love watching both of these guys fight. So even though I'm throwing my money on the Lawler horse, and I will be beside myself with sorrow if he loses. Standing by a river sobbing, I still think it'll be a good fight.
Yeah, that's my only. I'm rooting for a good fight. I'm rooting for a great fight here, actually. I just want to see both guys really tested and push to their limits and see this fight be everything it can be, because the potential for violence is immense here.
Also, I'd like it noted, since we do these shows and this kind of eternal cycle of today, and we don't remember yesterday. But I'd also like it. 2 weeks ago, it was probably the lowest MMA doldrums I've ever been in as a result of those crap-ass fights. And then with the Conor McGregor thing, I've been completely turned around. And so, I'm looking at this fight from a macro point of view.
And the Cerrone card was good, too.
Right, exactly right. So it's been a like, oh, man, MMA is back. And I know it's a ridiculous, long view. Joe Silva, Sean Shelby are sitting around going, what are you, fucking stupid? You look at the calendar for the rest of the year, but we don't exist in that world. We exist in the world of now. So
Yeah, June was dire, but June is often dire for MMA. But
not according to Morrissey.
What does Morrissey know about MMA?
Well, he knows a lot about months.
I
Yeah.
see. I see. Is June one of Morrissey's favorite months?
No, November, but
November. Well, what's that have to do with June? This is a complete non sequitur, Eugene.
I'm tired. I'm tired. I was watching El Mariachi last night. You know.
I see. I see.
My favorite El Mariachi story is Robert Rodriguez. This friend of mine was working with Robert Rodriguez, and he said, "Hey, I got a script, man. Maybe you should take a look at it at some point after you worked there long enough, felt comfortable." Rodriguez said, "Sure, kid. I'll take a look at it." Comes back, goes, "Hey, man, this is actually great." The kid goes, "That's cool." He goes, "Why don't we work on it together?" And he goes, "Cool." He goes, "Let me make a few changes. I'll get it back to you." Long weekend comes by, 3 or 4 days. He gets in the office Monday. He goes, "Hey, here you go. Take a look at what I've done." And he read through the script. I go, "Had he improved it?" He goes, "As far as I could tell, the improvement amounted to his name on the cover."
That's a big improvement.
So that's what he would have said. It said Robert Rodriguez and Joe Schefter, And I was like, wow, man, maybe that's... And so I sort of took note of it, but didn't complain. And then we were going to do a big pitch to some guys at Paramount or someplace like this. And then he let me see it one more time. Just go through it, see if there are any changes he made. And I said, what were the changes that need? He said, yeah, the change needed to be made to put my name back on it. I go,
see, that's what I was thinking he was going to do the first go round.
Yeah, no. And he came to him and said, "Hey, what's the story with this?" He goes, "Hey, man, it's called selling the screenplay, okay? They know me. They don't know you. It's, you work for me. It's mine. I don't even tell you this. It's the way." He goes, "Well, I actually prefer you not do this." And Rodriguez goes, "Okay." And
wow.
It's never been made into a movie. Joe no longer works with Robert Rodriguez.
Yeah.
But Robert Rodriguez is still rich and famous.
Exactly. I would have not. I think that your friend Joe made a mistake there.
I think so too.
Yeah, that was ill-advised. I mean, you want to try to keep your name on it and not just get stone fucked like the bands Metallica plagiarized from allegedly. But
Well, it's like that great scene from Empires of the Sun where they crack sir, I'm a officer of the British Navy, the Japanese soldier caves his head in with the gun, and John Malkovich, jumps out. I guess they asked the British guy to move a rock, and he goes, "I will not move any rocks." They cave his head in, and John Malkovich jumps out of the train car that's pulled up, and the British officer goes, "I'm okay," and Malkovich looks at him like, and picks the rock up.
Exactly.
Guy, you're great, man. I'll ghostwrite as many screenplays for you as you want, just as long as I can get on that gravy train.
That's right. Get paid. Get on the train. All right. So this is the show. I believe we're finished. Any final thoughts, Eugene?
Nah, man. This was a great show.
Yes.
It's a great show because you can't see the room around me, but I've got 3 animals ranged around me. Their asses all pointed in my direction. And they've all been having gas the entire show. Popeye first and foremost among them.
Well, we would expect nothing less from Popeye.
When you actually heard me coughing about 4 minutes ago, I'm not sensitive to smells like that, but it was just, I gave him a bunch of meat last night.
Oh.
It just about killed me. I'm sure everybody wants to know that. I'm glad to be able to share it.
Well, fortunately, we don't have smell technology yet, so you can't share that.
Well, it does exist. There's a guy who I wrote about, some CEO of a smell tech company. And he was like, "This is going to be the wave of the future." And it was great being in the presence of a guy who was so clearly nuts.
Yeah, no, people don't want to. No, that's not going to be the wave of the future. All right, I could be famously wrong about that. But give us a like on YouTube if you're watching that. That's the little thumb below the screen. Follow us on Twitter.
Not the middle finger.
Not the middle finger. They don't have that button anymore. All right, at Eugene S. Robinson, at Kid Nate. Read us at bloodyelbow.com. Read Eugene at Aussie.com and at Vice's Fightland. Buy Fight Everything You Ever Want to Know About Ass Kicking, but we're afraid to get your ass kicked for asking on Amazon.com.
Nice.
Subscribe to MMANation.com on YouTube, and I believe that's all our plugs. And so I'll be back with the 6th round after the fights. Eugene will be back on Knuckle Up on Monday.
And if you see me at the fights, you don't see me at the fights.
That's right. Eugene is too big for little people to be talking to.
No, we can chat. But no pictures of me staggered around Don Fry
I see.
the hallway of the SAP Center. I intend to imbibe. No drunken vines of Eugene, please.
I see. Eugene will be having a good time at the fights. That's the
Yeah.
plan. All right, Eugene. We'll have fun at the fights. Be careful and come back safe. We'll see you on Monday. Adios, MMA aficionados. Have a good one, everybody.
All right. Bye.
All right. See you, Eugene.